Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mitt, and on this channel we talk about stocks, investing, and finance. Today, we are going to react to a new interview that Palantir CEO Alex Karp has just given at the Reagan National Defense Forum. Now, obviously, I have a very heavy position in Palantir, so I cover the company a lot, try to do a lot of due diligence. I have not seen this full video. I've seen like a couple of bits and clips of it on Twitter and such, but not seen the full video. So my reaction is going to be my first time trying to understand what this interview is. It's only about a 6-minute clip, so we're going to react to it, try to understand what he's doing. If you haven't watched this interview, I definitely recommend watching to it because we're going to analyze it, talk about it. Whenever a CEO does a public appearance, it obviously matters, especially if they're a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. Alex Karp doesn't do a lot of these public appearances, but because Palantir is trying to become more mainstream, because they're trying to become a company that is, a pretty important software company throughout the world. Obviously, he's starting to recognize that doing these public interviews are important. Having a personal brand as a CEO is very important. So let's hop into the video and let's react to it.
Well, thank you. I'm hugely honored to be here on stage in front of people who serve our nation. Palantir, most of our customers are commercial. Most of our revenue doesn't come from intel and defense, and we're pretty global. I think first, part of our history was both being born in Silicon Valley and then leaving Silicon Valley. I think the first thing industry needs to do is affirm that if it's going to work with adversaries, it should always supply at least as good a technology to our services and the people who are defending our nation, which, in the past has not been the case, always. America, one of the...
So quick thing, just reacting to that real quick. I think he's going to start to go into this rant about Silicon Valley, right? Especially because the last thing he just said before I paused it is America. They were born in Silicon Valley as a tech company like most of them are, and then they transitioned away from Silicon Valley. That is sort of baked into the fabric of the culture of Palantir, which is that they don't want to be this traditional Silicon Valley company. They want to have values that are beyond the sort of dopamine and advertising stuff that most tech companies do. So when he's saying if they're going to work with adversaries, i.e. countries that don't have sort of freedom Western values, then they should be providing those same technologies at the highest of levels, if not higher, to America in and of itself, given America gives them the freedom to even be those companies.
Things that is we forget because it's so obvious to us, to the rest of the world, but often not to us, is in software, America is the #1 nation in the world, bar none. There is really no number two. Number 2 is Israel because there has to be a number 2. But we are #1. And I spent a lot of my life abroad. I speak German, wrote my dissertation in German, and I get people baffled all over the world asking me, how can it be that America is so much better at this than we are? Take Germany, has a lot of smart people, but the delta between what America delivers in software and what everyone else delivers is very wide. And so the key question for me is, how do we make sure that people doing the most important work in the world, like people on the stage, have access to the resources we already have?
So pretty important thing there, right? He's making this argument that America is the world's #1 place when it comes to technology. And honestly, I think he's right about this. I don't think there's an argument there. I don't think there are technology companies across the world at the level at which what America has produced. Tesla, Google, Netflix, Facebook. I mean, these things are literally just, they come from America. Sometimes the founders aren't always necessarily American, but they're born and adopted and ultimately scaled in this country, and then they become global. So I think the point he's making there is that's why there has to be a little bit more of an emphasis on the Western values that exist within America for those technology companies to actually provide value, because America is what gives them the freedom and opportunity.
Some of that is educational. People who are in industry and leadership positions must tell their employees, if you are developing software in this country, you are going to give it to the people on the stage and people in this room, and explain why. That I think is actually the most important thing.
Okay, so we're moving on to a responsibility to
We're
our
in our
country.
little myopic perch in the valley. So just the background in the valley is we've been fighting the valley aggressively pretty much since we started our company in 2004, and we've been battling the valley on 2 issues. One, it is my deep belief and the belief of my company that it's pretty odd to be able to sell your product abroad under very fair terms, essentially because our allies are willing to go along with your pricing because they're being protected by people who are here, and then not ship your software to them, A. B, I'm very in favor of free speech. If people disagree with working with the U.S. military, great, they should be able to voice that, but you as a leader should explain to them, I would hope, what the history is of especially the U.S. military. And, not that I have to lecture anyone here, but it's surprising how many people I have to lecture in the Valley about, the positive effects and what the world would look like without the efforts of people in the U.S. military. But be that as it may, while they protested my house every day and put barbed wire around our cafeteria, we at Palantir, not just me, but engineers who were 22, fought through that to be able to do something that is more important than just working with the many companies we work with.
So that's a little dig at a lot of the companies or a lot of the people that basically say, Palantir is too much involved with the U.S. government and the U.S. military. Their whole argument is like, look, this entity provides us the ability to be free, right? Like without the military doing what the military does, we don't have our freedoms. So it's very important that we provide software and technologies to them, and you can voice your opinions against that. But at the end of the day, if they're the ones that are actually doing a lot of the work that keeps this country as stable as it is, then it is important.
And so we're already on the unpopular side. And by the way, we say in public what we say in private in this context, which you're also not supposed to do according to Valley rules. So we're a little used to being unpopular. I actually had a very minimal standard, which is lower in the interview. I tell people in the Valley, if you want to do something, that's your right. This is America, by the way, fought for by people on the stage. But be that as it may, you do have a responsibility to articulate what is it you're doing and why are you doing something with an adversary you're not doing with the U.S. government. That is your responsibility to this country and to everybody in the Valley, for which I'm a pariah.
All right, that was his dig at Silicon Valley. Last part seems transformation
equally
of AI.
as transformational, and you need this combination between people that know the material, that's the people on stage, and people who can extend what they're doing, and also people, in my case, I'm really good at managing really complicated, difficult people. And so that's what I do for a living. And then you get this thing where nobody can, and of course there are these enormous, where no one can imagine they're not number one. And that should be our standard. And if that's the standard, and then most of the issues we have in America are not actually because of adversaries, it's because of internal divisions and not being able to agree on certain things. This is why the shift here, agreement, America having consensus on anything is very powerful. And we haven't had that for lots of reasons you can debate. But we do have it now.
Interesting. So on that, he's talking sort of about the nature of AI, particularly the nature of AI becoming as advanced as it possibly can, and the United States being a leader in that role. And I think that's another unique element of this forum, which is defense in the digital age, U.S. cybersecurity and the future of warfare, right? The ability to use artificial intelligence for defense purposes is something that they want to be a unique leader in.
And then there's the cultural. I mean, why is America so good at software? Well, we actually play fair in teams. We have highly technical people. We're goal-oriented, and we are willing to admit we're wrong and not be stained by failure when we screw up. So I think what we need to do is continue on this trend. I think U.S. government officials should really say loudly to people they want to work with who are developing software that they must supply the best software in the world to them. I think we in industry, by the way, it's often framed as you framed it, but I would say from my vantage point, there are certain technical issues like how do you do AI at the edge? How do you actually create an all-encompassing environment, which is what we're doing with a lot of industry in the Western world, but where the data is segmented. So if you have a global industry, you're not going to be able to hit the data store in France, Korea, America.
Interesting. Okay, so that is the interview. Now, a couple of thoughts and takeaways I have from that. Number one, he does not care about what anyone has to say about Palantir or the company, right? His sort of thoughts and ideas are, we're going to take this baby to the moon and we're going to do it providing the best technology that we can to the countries that we align our values with. So that's sort of the first thing. I think, if anything, from a company perspective, that should really get people to understand what that idea culturally means in the context of how Wall Street is also valuing the stock, which is that they work with the government too much, not enough commercial. I think their argument is like, look, we know we need to work with commercial, but we also understand the value, the immense value we provide to the rest of the world, or to the world's governments that align with our values, and that's not something that's ever going to go away. So I think because of that, that's why he didn't really care about anyone who's saying anything else. He's like, look, we're going to focus on this because this actually does matter, and if we stop focusing on this, we lose the ultimate values of that we have as a company in the first place. The second thing is the digs at Silicon Valley. You know, Alex Karp has been known to do this. This is why they left the Valley. This is why their headquarters are in Denver, Colorado. He does not care about what Silicon Valley thinks. He cares more about his own ability to actually articulate an argument, and for other people who are going against him to articulate a better argument for why the Valley is working with adversaries of America, or why they don't want to work to help protect America, right? It's kind of like everyone wants to benefit off freedoms until it's actually time to understand what it takes to get those freedoms in the first place. And I think that's sort of the major takeaway from this. Now, in this video, there was a clip that they probably chose not to put in, because I saw a clip from Twitter, which was, we're good at product and we're not good at sales. For obvious reasons, they probably didn't put it in here because they don't want to say that out loud, even though Karp says whatever he wants, right? That's what makes him who he is. I think that also points to this idea of they're trying to get better at figuring out how to market. This is why they're doing these interviews in the first place. They're trying to figure out how to brand the company in a way that actually gets people to care about them and know about them. The idea of product being superior than everything else, that works in a lot of industries, but at the end of the day, if you can't get people's attention, you know, you could have the best product in the world, you could write the best book in the world. If no one reads it, then it doesn't matter. So the ability to just be sort of zero in and focused on how do we sell this product now that we've created the best product, I think is going to be the ultimate challenge for them going forward. But interviews like these go back to their fundamental values, which is that they want to protect the Western hemisphere and the Western values, and they want to create the most important software in the world for companies across the world doing amazing things and governments across the world that need to do important things to be able to use Palantir software. So those are my thoughts on Alex Karp talking at the Reagan National Defense Forum. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I always read the comments and I respond to the comments. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.